Dipa Ma, Chapter 2, Awakening. Quote, "What can I take with me when I die?" Within 10 years, Dipa Ma had lost 2 children, her husband, and her health. In her mid-40s, she was a widow with a 7-year-old daughter to raise on her own. Both of her parents were dead, India was far away, and she was overwhelmed with grief and confusion. "I didn't know what to do, where to go, or how to live," she said. "I had nothing and no one to call my own." Months went by, and all she could do was cry, holding a photo of Rajani in her lap. During the next few years, her health continued to decline. Her condition became so serious that she felt her only hope of survival would be to practice meditation. She reflected on the irony of her situation. When she was young, healthy, and eager to meditate, she had been prevented from doing so. Now, responsible for a child and totally exhausted, in despair and facing death, she felt that she had no other option, that she would die of a broken heart unless she did something about the state of her mind. She asked herself, "What can I take with me when I die?" She looked around at her dowry, her silk saris and gold jewelry, even at her daughter. As much as I loved her, I knew I couldn't take her, so I said, "Let me go to the meditation center. Maybe I can find something there I can take with me when I die." At this lowest point in her life, the Buddha appeared to her in a dream. A luminous presence, he softly chanted a verse from the Dhammapada, originally offered as consolation to a father grieving the death of his son. "Clinging to what is dear brings sorrow. Clinging to what is dear brings fear. To one who is entirely free from endearment, there is no sorrow or fear." When Dipa Ma awoke, she felt clear and calm. She knew she must learn to meditate no matter what the state of her health. She understood the Buddha's advice. If she wanted true peace, she had to practice until she was free from all attachment and sorrow. Although she had performed Buddhist rituals all her life, Dipa Ma knew little about what meditation practice actually entailed. Intuitively, however, she was drawn to the ancient path that promised freedom from suffering. Unlike concentration practices, in which attention is fixed on a single object, Vipassana, insight, meditation, focuses on the constantly changing nature of experience. Insight refers to clearly seeing into the 3 characteristics of experience: its impermanence, its unsatisfactoriness, and the absence of an inherent self. The Buddha taught that through meditation, it is possible to break through the illusions that limit our lives. Liberation or enlightenment, according to Buddhist teaching, lies in experiencing the true nature of existence. Dipa Ma made arrangements to go to the Kamayut Meditation Center in Rangoon. Everything her husband had left her, her property, her jewelry, all of her material goods, she gave to her next-door neighbor, saying, "Please take whatever I have and use it to care for Dipa." She expected never to return. If she was going to die anyway, she reasoned, it might as well be at the meditation center. Dipa Ma's first retreat did not go as she expected. Once at the center, she was given a room and basic instruction. She began to practice in the early morning hours, first focusing her attention on the breath, then noting the sensations, thoughts, and emotions arising in her body and mind as she sat. As the day wore on, her concentration deepened. That afternoon, she started to walk to the meditation hall to meet with her teacher. Suddenly, she stopped, unable to move. She wasn't sure why. She only knew that she couldn't go forward or pick up her foot. She stood there, puzzled but not particularly distressed, for several minutes. Finally, she looked down and saw that a large dog had clamped its teeth around her leg. Her concentration had become so deep, even in the first hours of practice, that she had not felt it. Jolted from her concentrated state, Dipa Ma called for help and tried to shake her leg free. The dog would not let go, but finally some monks managed to pull it away. Even though they assured her that the animal was not rabid, Dipa Ma was afraid of dying. Ironically, since she'd come to the meditation center to die. And she made her way to a hospital where she was given the first of a series of daily rabies injections. Going back and forth to the hospital meant that she missed eating. In South Asian monastic tradition, a single meal is served each day, and it must be eaten before noon. Soon, Dipama had become so weak that the monks suggested that she return home to recuperate. At home, her young daughter, upset by her mother's abrupt departure, would not let her out of her sight. Dipama felt that her one opportunity for enlightenment had passed. Frequently, she wept out of sheer frustration. She didn't give up her meditation practice, however. Using the beginning instructions she'd been given on her short retreat, she meditated patiently at home for several years, making time whenever she could. She had faith that eventually she would find another chance to go on retreat. That opportunity came when Dipama learned that a family friend and Buddhist teacher, Anagarika Munindra, was living at a nearby meditation center. Anagarika means non-householder, or one who has left home to follow the spiritual path. She invited him to her home and related her meditation experience to him over tea. Munindra encouraged her to come to Tathana Yekta, the meditation center where he himself was deepening his practice under the tutelage of the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, the most renowned monk, scholar, and meditation master in Burma at that time. Thus, Dipama was offered a rare opportunity to learn from a great teacher, guided by a family friend in her native language. Around the same time, her sister Hema and her family came to Burma, so now her daughter Dipa would be able to live with her aunt, uncle, and cousins, while Dipama was at the meditation center. Dipama embarked on her second retreat in a very different frame of mind. Less urgent and impulsive, more planned and thoughtful. Although she had been an insomniac since the death of Rajani, she now found that she could not stay awake. By the third day, however, she was able to attain a deep state of concentration, and the need for sleep vanished, along with the desire to eat. Munindra, concerned that her concentration was out of balance, requested that she attend Mahasi Sayadaw's weekly talk, even though she couldn't understand Burmese. She didn't want to go, but Munindra insisted, and to please him she went. On the way to the talk, Dipama began to experience heart palpitations. Feeling very weak, she ended up on her hands and knees, crawling up the stairs to the hall. She didn't understand the talk, but continued her meditation practice. After the talk, Dipama found that she couldn't stand up. She felt stuck in her seated posture, her body stiff, immobilized by the depth of her concentration. In the following days, Dipama's practice deepened dramatically as she moved rapidly through the classical stages of the, quote, progress of insight that are said to precede enlightenment, according to the teachings of the Theravada, South Asian, tradition. She experienced a brilliant light, followed by the feeling that everything around her was dissolving. Her body, the floor, everything was in pieces, broken and empty. That gave way to intense mental and physical pain, with an excruciating burning and constricting in her body. She felt that she would burst with pressure. Then something extraordinary happened. A simple moment. It was daytime. She was sitting on the floor, practicing among a group of meditators. An instantaneous transition took place, so quiet and delicate that it seemed as if nothing happened at all. Of this luminous instant, Dipama was later to say simply, "I don't know." And yet in it, her life had been profoundly and irrevocably transformed. After over 3 decades of searching for freedom, at the age of 53, after 6 days of practice, Dipama reached the first stage of enlightenment. The Theravada tradition recognizes 4 phases of enlightenment, each producing distinct, recognizable changes in the mind. Almost immediately, her blood pressure returned to normal and her heart palpitations diminished. Previously unable to climb the meditation center stairs, this ascent was now effortless, and she could walk at any pace. As the Buddha had predicted in her dream, the grief she had borne day and night vanished. Her constant fearfulness was gone, leaving her with an unprecedented equanimity and a clear understanding that she could handle anything. Dipama continued to practice at Tathana Yekta for 2 more months, then returned to her home in Rangoon. After a few weeks, she embarked on a year of frequent trips back and forth to the center. At her next retreat, she experienced another breakthrough after only 5 days of meditation. The path leading to this insight was similar to the first, except that it was marked by even more pain and suffering. After reaching the second stage of enlightenment, her physical and mental condition were transformed yet again. Her restlessness decreased, while her physical stamina increased. Those who knew Dipa Ma were fascinated by her transformation. Almost overnight, she had changed from a sickly, dependent, grief-stricken woman into a healthy, independent, radiant being. Dipa Ma told those around her, quote, "You have seen me. I was disheartened and broken down due to the loss of my husband and children, and due to disease. I suffered so much. I could not walk properly. But now how are you finding me? All my disease is gone. I am refreshed, and there is nothing in my mind. There is no sorrow, no grief. I am quite happy. If you come to meditate, you will also be happy. There is no magic, only follow the instructions." End quote. Inspired by Dipa Ma's example, her friends and family came to practice at the center. The first to arrive were her sister, Hema, and a close friend, Kuki Ma. Although Hema was the mother of 8 children, 5 of whom still lived at home, she made time to practice with her sister for almost a year. Later, Dipa Ma's daughter, Dipa, and several of Hema's daughters joined them. They were a sight to behold, 2 middle-aged mothers and their teenage daughters meditating among the austere, saffron-clad monks. Meditation centers did not normally accommodate female retreatants, and their living quarters were rustic, hovel-like rooms in a remote corner of the property. Hema's daughter, Dothan Myint, recalled that they had to climb through the bushes and scramble up a hill to get to their interviews with Munindra. During school holidays, Dipa Ma and Hema might have as many as 6 children between them. Despite the close family atmosphere, the rules were strict. We would eat in silence together as a family, remembered Dothan Myint, and we would not look up at each other. It was very different. During this phenomenal year of practice, all 6 children of the Barua clan, 4 girls and 2 boys, achieved at least the first stage of enlightenment. The young Dipa's commitment to meditation practice was especially gratifying to her mother, who wanted to give her daughter something of enduring value, the, quote, priceless gift. Again and again she would tell Dipa that meditation offered the only way to peace. Dipa Ma's sister, Hema, was also adept in meditation practice, and had progressed rapidly to the same level as Dipa Ma. Dothan Myint recalled the powerful effect meditation had on her mother. Beginning of long quote. "When I arrived home from college vacation, my mother was not there to greet me. This was very unusual because she never stayed away from home long. My brothers and sisters informed me that she was at the meditation center. When I went to the center, I saw her sitting next to Munindra, very cool and calm, and not acknowledging me. I was impressed. I wanted to be aloof like that. I decided if meditation can change my mother, it must be very powerful, and so I must do this also. Of course, I later found that meditation was not about being cool and aloof." End quote. Unfortunately, not everyone in the family was so enthusiastic about Hema's changes. Quote, "My father was upset that she was not doing housework. She was just sitting, so he threatened to tell the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw. My mother said, fine. When he went to talk to the Sayadaw convinced him to begin his own meditation. Soon he gained some insight, and he never bothered my mother again about sitting too much." In 1965, Dipa Ma was drawn into a new dimension of spiritual practice. In anticipation of Munindra's return to India, the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw told his student that since he was going back to the land of the Siddhis, psychic powers, he should know something about them. He wanted to train Munindra in the Siddhis, but Munindra was too involved in teaching to undertake Siddhi practice himself. Instead, Munindra decided to train others, partly as an experiment to prove that the Siddhis were real. For this purpose, he chose his most advanced students, Dipa Ma and her family, and trained them directly from the Visuddhimagga. Munindra knew that psychic powers are not only amoral, but also potentially seductive. There's a great risk of their misuse, unless a student's moral development is secure. Dipa Ma was chosen not only for her powers of concentration, but also for her impeccable morality. Dipa Ma, Hema, and 3 of their daughters were introduced to the practices of dematerialization, body doubling, cooking food without fire, mind reading, visitation of the heaven and hell realms, time travel, knowledge of past lives, and more. Dipa Ma was the most adept of all Munindra's students, and the most playful. It has been said that she nonchalantly arrived at her interviews with Munindra by walking through a wall, or spontaneously materializing out of thin air, and that she came to master all 5 categories of supernatural abilities. See Chapter 9. In 1966, after Munindra's departure for India, Dipa Ma became sought after as a guide in meditation and began teaching in Rangoon. She deeply enjoyed offering to others the peace that she had found for herself, and she persuaded many friends and relatives to join her in practice. Dipa Ma's first formal student was her neighbor Malati Barua, a widow trying to raise 6 young children alone. Malati presented an interesting challenge. She was eager to meditate, but unable to leave her house. Dipa Ma, believing that enlightenment was possible in any environment, devised practices that her new student could carry out at home. In one such practice, she taught Malati to steadfastly notice the sucking sensation of the infant at her breast, with complete presence of mind, for the duration of each nursing period. This amounted to hours each day, and, as Dipa Ma had hoped, Malati attained the first stage of enlightenment without ever leaving her home. Thus, Dipa Ma began her career of leading householders to wisdom in the midst of their busy lives. End section.